Matthew 23, 1 to 36, the condemnation of hypocrisy and the end of an age. Matthew 23 stands as one of the most severe discourses spoken by Jesus during his earthly ministry. Delivered in the temple precincts during the final week before the crucifixion, these words expose the religious leadership of Israel and announce the impending judgment upon the covenant order they represented. The passage reveals the contrast between outward religion and the righteousness that comes through the Messiah. The authority of Moses' seat. Matthew 23, verse 1 to 3. Jesus begins by addressing the crowds and his disciples, speaking concerning the scribes and the Pharisees. He says that they sit in Moses' seat. This phrase refers to their position as interpreters and teachers of the law of Moses. They held official authority within the covenant system to read, explain, and apply the Torah to the people. Because of this position, Jesus acknowledges that the people were to observe what was read from the law. Yet he immediately exposes the contradiction between their teaching and conduct. They spoke the commandments, but did not embody them. The law that passed through their lips did not transform their hearts. Thus, a distinction appears between the authority of the covenant they represented and the hypocrisy of those administering it. Heavy burdens and religious display. Matthew 23, verse 4 to 7. Jesus then describes how these leaders imposed burdens upon the people. Their interpretations of the law multiplied regulations and traditions, creating a system of religious obligation that weighed heavily upon the conscience. Yet the leaders themselves avoided the weight of what they demanded. Their religious life was also characterized by public display. They enlarged their phylacteries and lengthened their tassels. These items were associated with the commandments given in the law, but they had become symbols of outward religiosity. Honor, recognition, and titles such as rabbi were sought as marks of status. Religion had become a stage upon which prestige and authority were performed. The true measure of greatness. Matthew 23, 8 to 12. Jesus then reorients the understanding of authority among his followers. He tells them not to seek titles such as rabbi, father, or master in the sense that elevates one above another in spiritual status. The reason is theological. There is one teacher, one father, and one master. The community that belongs to the Messiah is fundamentally a brotherhood under divine authority. Greatness in this kingdom is not measured by hierarchy, but by humility. The one who exalts himself will be humbled, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. This statement anticipates the transformation that would occur as the old covenant structures passed away, and the people of God were gathered under a new covenant reality centered entirely in Christ. The 8 woes against the scribes and Pharisees, Matthew 23 to 32. Jesus then pronounces a series of woes upon the scribes and Pharisees. These woes function as covenant indictments, echoing the prophetic judgments spoken against Israel throughout the Hebrew Scriptures. 1. Shutting the kingdom, v. 13. They prevented people from entering the kingdom. While possessing knowledge of the Scriptures that pointed to the Messiah, they rejected him and opposed those who believed. 2. Exploiting the vulnerable, v. 14. Their religion masked exploitation, particularly toward widows, while long prayers created the appearance of devotion. 3. Corrupting converts, v. 15. Their missionary zeal produced converts who became even more entrenched in the same legalistic system. 4. Blind guides, 16:22. They developed intricate distinctions regarding oaths, valuing temple gold above the temple itself and the gift above the altar. Such reasoning revealed spiritual blindness. 5. Neglecting the weightier matters, VV 23 to 24. They were meticulous about tithing small herbs, yet ignored justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Their precision in minor details concealed the absence of the law's central moral demands. 6. Outward purity, inward corruption, VV 25 to 26. They cleansed the outside of cups and dishes while the inside remained filled with greed and self-indulgence. External ritual purity had replaced inward righteousness. 7. Whitewashed tombs, VV 27 to 28. They appeared righteous outwardly, but inwardly were full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. 8. The murderous heritage, VV 29 to 32. They honored the prophets' tombs while claiming they would not have participated in their deaths. Yet by rejecting and ultimately participating in the death of the Messiah and his messengers, they completed the pattern of their ancestors. This final statement is especially significant. Jesus says, "Fill up then the measure of your fathers." The language evokes the biblical concept that judgment comes when iniquity reaches its fullness. The blood of the prophets. Matthew 23:33 to 36. Jesus concludes the discourse with a declaration of impending judgment. He calls them serpents and offspring of vipers, echoing prophetic language used against covenant-breaking Israel. He announces that prophets, wise men, and scribes would be sent to them. Some would be killed, some crucified, some flogged and persecuted. The rejection of these messengers would culminate in a reckoning. Then comes the climactic statement, "Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation." Jesus traces the bloodshed from Abel to Zechariah, summarizing the long history of violence against God's messengers within Israel. The guilt of that history would converge upon the generation standing before him. The phrase, "this generation," situates the warning within the lifetime of those hearing him. The covenant order centered in the temple, its leadership, and its system of righteousness was approaching its end. The leaders who rejected the Messiah would bear responsibility for that culmination. The significance of the judgment. Matthew 23 stands as a prophetic announcement that the system represented by the scribes and Pharisees had reached its completion. Their authority rested upon the law and the temple-centered covenant. Yet, their rejection of the one to whom that covenant pointed revealed the exhaustion of the entire structure. Jesus' words, therefore, function both as indictment and as transition. The exposure of hypocrisy prepares the way for the revelation of a righteousness not grounded in human performance or religious prestige, but in the person and work of the Messiah himself. The discourse closes with the solemn assurance that the blood of the righteous would be accounted for within that generation, marking the decisive end of the covenant era that had defined Israel for centuries.